Hi guys and girls, I'm Obsidian Ant and welcome to 3301. This is where I take a look at the news and happenings in and around Elite Dangerous. Today I'm going to take a look at the beta release for Horizons, the newly announced VR specs for the game, the increase in Elite sales numbers, there's a community goal for the Horizons beta, this time on a planetary surface, and also I'll be taking a look at a massive player-run exploration event. So, as you no doubt will be well aware by now, the beta for Horizons released last week on Monday the 30th of November, and that's of course the reason why there was no 3301 episode last week. Horizons has brought with it a profound change to how we play Elite. The planetary landings are being at the forefront of this. There have been a whole load of videos and screenshots released of the game by this point, so everyone should have a good feel of what to expect from Horizons. I've seen a fair bit of talking regarding the graphical quality of the planetary landings, with a number of comments feeling the quality doesn't quite live up to expectations. However, there does seem to be a wide gap in graphics from planet to planet, and much of the reason for this is because Frontier are yet to enable the high quality assets for all planet types. Now, the clip you can see in the background here is from one of the best looking areas I've found, and it'll hopefully be very commonplace quite soon. In fact, Frontier have confirmed that subsurface scattering, a process whereby light can penetrate the surface of an object and then exit at different locations, something of course that's perfect for ice, will be available in the next patch on Ice Worlds. Now, there's been a load of good things about Horizons. It seems to be a very good expansion overall, and if you've been watching my videos over the past week, you'll have seen me showing off quite a few of these things. But there are one or two things that are not quite up to scratch and could probably do with a bit of improvement. Now, the biggest issue here for me was how the points of interest were generated, and it seems to be an issue that bothers quite a few people. Fortunately, as I've recorded this, Michael Brooks, executive producer for Elite Dangerous, has stated that this point of interest generation will be changed for the next update patch for the beta for Horizons. However, I'll briefly explain what the issue has been. Currently, the process works as follows. Once you reach the surface area of the planet, you fly over it in your ship, and keep an eye on the radar. Eventually, a circle will appear. This is wholly not unlike how the unidentified signal sources appear when in space. That is to say, it's largely random. Once such a circle appears, you need to land your ship inside of it, or you can also land just outside of it. Now, once landed, you can deploy your SRV, and it is at this point, and this point only, that the contents of the point of interest are spawned. So this has led to more than a few very unusual situations where as soon as you're in your SRV, you find yourself in the middle of an outpost or a shipwreck. Now, this can be very jarring because you can't see these locations until you've deployed the SRV. So when you were in your ship flying over the surface, and even when you landed your ship, the point of interest wasn't there. You could have landed right in the middle of an outpost and not even have seen it, and that doesn't actually generate or spawn until you're in the SRV. The immediate thought of many within the community was that this is so unusual and strange that it must be a bug. However, Frontier have since confirmed that this is working as intended, and I've linked the post below where Frontier actually say that. So over the weekend there was a massive thread on the forums where a lot of players were expressing dissatisfaction at this particular gameplay mechanic, and today Michael Brooks has come on the forums and said that they will indeed change this process for the next patch, which is very good news. It means we'll now be able to scout out the surface of a planet with our ship, rather than having to land at each and every point of interest that has invisible contents until we actually get into the SRV. So great to see Frontier are listening. And all that said, Frontier have done an exceptional job of Horizons, and it works especially well in VR, which brings us on to the next subject. In Friday's newsletter, Frontier announced the minimum specs for virtuality and Horizons, and they actually require a fair beast of a computer, with a minimum processor of an Intel quad-core i7 3770K or an AMD FX 3350. It needs a minimum of 16 GB of RAM and a minimum NVIDIA GTX 980 graphics card with 4 GB of VRAM or better. Now keep in mind that these are the minimum system requirements, and that may seem a little crazy for some people. So why does VR need such high system requirements? Well, VR is very resource intensive technology. Right from the beginning, Oculus have said that VR will not run on an entry-level PC. Now, I use an Oculus Rift myself. I've got the DK2, which is the development kit version. It has lower specs than the final retail release, using a resolution of just 1920 by 1080 with a refresh rate of 75 Hz or 75 frames per second. The frame rate is extremely important to VR. Whilst on a monitor, 30 frames per second can look very smooth, although some people usually can prefer 60 frames per second. When using a VR headset, a drop of even 5 frames per second can cause stuttering, latency and even nausea, so it is all important to keep the frame rate constant and as high as possible. Now, the release version of both the Vive and the Oculus Rift require a refresh rate of 90 Hz or 90 frames per second at resolutions of 2160 by 1200. Now, this clearly cannot be done on either a basic or an entry-level PC. Even now, my somewhat aging GTX 780 struggles to maintain 75 frames per second at 1080p in VR. So whilst the minimum requirement of a GTX 980 might initially seem shockingly high, it is after all one of the top-end cards currently available. When it really comes down to it, it completely makes sense. While some people may be happy to use VR as the suboptimal experience, it really isn't the way that it was intended to be used, and nothing more than a high-end PC will currently offer that. However, all that said, VR is still in the very early days, and over the coming years things will no doubt change. Probably not too long from now, there will be some really good VR capable graphics cards that are very affordable. As with all new technology, it tends to initially be very expensive, especially for early adopters. Over the Black Friday period, Elite Dangerous went on sale at a pretty low price of just £10. This gave a tremendous boost in sales. In Steam copies alone, it rose more than 30% in total owned copies, bringing the total Steam copies of the game up to 565,000. This of course doesn't include the copies sold directly through Frontier. So this is pretty good news for Frontier, and it's quite good news for the community too, as it ensures the continued growth of the player base and the game. Now, we're going to have to wait and see how many of those players actually stick around, but judging by the amount of players in the starter systems, it would seem that quite a few are there. And whether or not a lot of these players, or a high percentage of these players, will upgrade to Horizons, again is something that only time will tell. Toward the end of last week, Frontier put up a community goal for the Horizons beta, a community goal that would require players to go on a hunt and search for an object lost on a planetary surface. Now, many beta testers have rose to the challenge, and this is actually quite an interesting idea. It shows that Frontier can indeed add persistent objects at set locations into the game for people to find as and when they see fit. And this ties into my earlier comments regarding the points of interest which currently spawn at random locations and at random intervals. Clearly Frontier have the technology for alternative methods of discovery, but it remains to be seen if and when such a thing will ever happen. At any rate, the community goal is currently going quite well in terms of the number of people getting involved. They have managed to crack the clues and locate the cargo container. However, it appears there may be a bug of some type, preventing the players from scooping the cargo container. It simply drops right back out the ship again. As of recording this on Monday morning, Frontier are still yet to comment on this, and I'm sure we're going to hear something soon though, maybe even by the time you watch this. Now, if you're interested in the community goal and more information, then keep an eye on the beta community goal thread at the forums. I've linked it in the video description. Now, I'm sure many of you would have heard of Commander Eramus, the first player to reach the opposite end of the galaxy, a journey which he charted in rather epic proportions on his YouTube channel at the beginning of 2015. Well, in January 2016, he is back with a massive community event, set to create perhaps the largest player fleet ever assembled. This new project is called Distant Worlds and is an expedition that will roughly follow the original route across the galaxy. This time there will be additional tasks involved, namely the charting of the surfaces of many planets along the way. This should be a very special event indeed, and those interested should head over to Aramis's forum thread and sign up to be part of the expedition. The thread contains a load of details and information. I also personally plan on getting involved and have signed up for the expedition, so for those of you that plan on coming along, hopefully I should see you there. Now, there's one other thing I'd like to talk about before I go, and that is another Elite Dangerous YouTube channel. This guy does commercials for elite ships, and they are absolutely brilliant. There's a little clip of one here, but to see the full thing, along with all his other commercials, do go to Rendo's YouTube channel. You certainly won't be disappointed. You can find a link to him below. Anyway, that brings us to the end of this episode of 3301. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time. Today we're going to go take a look at the Sol system, the home of Earth. Here I am then in M. Gorbachev, one of the space stations orbiting our planet. I'm in my Cobra because I thought that would make a nice change to head out and explore in. This is Mercury, the closest planet to our sun, and one of the hottest. Clearly at this point in our future we've overcome that problem, as we have large settlements there. This is Erlich City, the largest settlement on Mercury.